So this week, something rare happened in Beijing. It's a high-level meeting that the last time we saw it taking place was a decade ago in 2015. This Central Urban Work Conference has brought together top officials to tackle the question of how to build better cities for the 1.4 billion people. Because here's the thing, the latest national census shows that 64% of China now lives in urban areas. And the cities face pending problems such as housing costs, mega cities losing attraction to some younger people, and the climate crisis that some people say is not a big deal but actually demands urgent action. And the World Conference has identified 7 major directions to deepen urbanization, such as optimizing urban system, improve innovation, affordability, and build low-carbon cities. It's a bit too much to unpack all 7 goals in one episode. So let's zoom in on one area where we all have a role to play and talk about why cities are so important to hitting our climate targets. It's Friday, July the 18th. You'll probably remember that the Paris Agreement set the global target to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and the UN has been keeping tabs on how we are doing on this target. And the current projections is that we are heading for a rise of between 2.5 and 2.9 degrees, and that's well beyond the goal. And the solution to bring us closer to that 1.5 degrees target is actually largely on the cities. Because think about this. Cities only take up just 3% of the Earth's land surface, but they are condensed with over half of the world's population, and then spew out 70% of global emissions. And the United Nations has also been releasing the emissions gap reports, and the 2024 edition tells us that the power sector continues to be the largest global contributor to emissions, which stands at 15.1 gigatons of carbon dioxide, and that's followed by transport at 8.4 gigatons. And then it becomes a bit clearer that working on our energy system and the transport services should be the priorities in making our cities low carbon and green. First of all, it's a bit cliche, but I understand in some regions, driving your own car is more efficient. But now we're talking cities, where over, again, 50% of the world's population are crammed in just 3% of the land surface. So public transport is necessary, not only for solving the traffic congestions, but also it's just a much greener choice. And in China, there have been progress in many aspects. The city buses are becoming more punctual, whether it's through the bus lanes or an identification system that adjusts traffic lights when the buses are detected. Then underground, Chinese cities have also developed the world's largest subway networks, which are 100% electric. And then the subway cars also come with technologies such as regenerative braking and smarter environment control system that further bring down the consumption for power. But to be honest, the real game changer in China's public transport services actually doesn't look high-tech at all. So as of mid-2024, there was an estimate of 12 million shared bikes around country, the kind of bikes that you can just scan and ride away. And according to the World Resources Institute, this dockless system of bike sharing in China may have reduced roughly 4.8 million tons of carbon emissions every year. And ChatGPT says that you need to plant roughly 80 million trees and let them grow for 10 years to absorb that much of carbon dioxide. So it's a lot. And people love these bikes for a lot of reasons. The bikes may look simple, but they are actually powered by many technologies. First of all, there's the mobile payment system, which is very convenient. You can just scan with your phone and ride away. And then there's also the Beidou navigation system, which makes it possible to actually park it around the cities without any physical dock. And then the bikes are also so effective when it comes to this so-called first or last mile solution. Just try to recollect your city travels from the past when you have to go somewhere that's not very far, but it's kind of beyond walking distance, where you have to take the subway maybe for 2 stops and then walk back for 5 or 10 minutes, which just doesn't feel very efficient. But in China, now you have these bikes which are perfect for such a short distance city travel. And on top of these shared bikes, there's also more than 6 million shared electric bikes now that people can travel faster and further. So a lot of things are going electric now. Shenzhen was the first city in the whole world to fully electrify its bus fleet back in 2017. And now 3/4 of the buses around China are electric. And this part needs no more introduction from me, that China is the world's largest electric vehicle market. And then there's also the high-speed trains that are also 100% electric, which is a much greener intercity transportation than domestic air travels. So with all these transportation services going electric, here's the catch. That electrifying transport is only part of the equation to going green. What powers that electricity matters just as much. If the electric vehicles and high-speed trains run on coal-fired power, then their climate benefits may not be as effective as we hoped for. And now we get to the energy system of our cities. First of all, we need to acknowledge that China is still the largest producer and consumer of coals at the moment. But then we also need to give credit to where it's due, that China also leads the world in many renewable technologies, in solar, in wind, in hydro, etc. But even with green tech growing faster than ever, there's still a realistic issue for the cities, that they lack access to these clean energies locally, as cities are densely built up and have limited space for large-scale renewable projects like solar farms, wind turbines, or hydro dams. And the urban land is so expensive and prioritized for housing, infrastructure, and commerce, the areas with higher return on investment, but not energy generation. And at the same time, the best renewable resources like steady wind or powerful rivers are often far away from the cities. They're usually in rural and remote areas where the land is abundant and conditions are ideal for clean energy production. And the technical problem is that we need to bring these clean energies from the latter to the former. And China has this west to east electricity transmission project, which is a massive national initiative that brings clean, abundant power from the energy-rich western provinces like Inner Mongolia, Shanxi, Guizhou, Guangxi, Yunnan, to the densely populated and industrialized eastern regions, the ones with a name that you're much more familiar with, like Guangzhou, Beijing, Shenzhen, Shanghai. But if you still have any memory from high school physics class, you must know that during power transmission, some electricity will be lost as heat. And when the power is transmitted across thousands of kilometers, how much do we have left when they arrive? And long story short, China has also developed some of the most advanced ultra-high voltage transmission technology in the world. And these power lines drastically reduce transmission losses, making it possible to move renewable electricity over vast distances with high efficiency, and then helps curb the dependency on coals in urban areas by replacing fossil-based electricity with cleaner alternatives from the western region. But of course, problems still remain. The rush hour traffic can still be a nightmare. The bike-sharing system has brought convenience, but also sometimes a bit chaotic parking. And the renewable energies aren't as reliable as fossil fuels at the moment. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind may not blow, and the rivers may run low when you need them most for electricity. But a power grid needs steady, stable electricity to keep running safely. And us citizens, we also need power that we can count on to work, to live, and to get through these summers that seem to be getting hotter each year. And that pushes the need for technological innovation that balances the grid with fast-growing renewable energies and perhaps a more realistic view on fossil fuels. And now, to build a low-carbon city, we no longer just simply look at the problem from the environmental perspective. There's also the human perspective and the tech perspective at account. And to truly move forward the urbanization process, we need to look at the bigger picture and tackle challenges from multiple angles. And at this week's Central Urban Work Conference, officials laid out a broader vision that alongside going greener, there are 6 major goals for China's future cities. The focus is shifting from building more and more to making better use of what we already have. As they put it at the conference, China needs to proactively adapt to changing circumstances and rethink how we plan, build, and live in the cities. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Deep Dive. If you enjoyed what you just heard, don't forget to follow us on your podcast platforms. Just search for Deep Dive. You can also leave a comment to let us know what you want to learn about China and beyond. This episode is brought to you by me, Li Yingqi, and my colleagues Zhang Zhang and Qizhi. We'll see you in the next one.